I was finally coming home for Christmas after years in the military. But 3 days before my flight, my dad sent me a message that stopped everything. Don't come home. What he told me next changed how I see family forever. Welcome to Betty's Magical Stories, where real-life moments turn into unforgettable stories that touch the heart, surprise the soul, and stay with you long after the video ends. I was coming home for Christmas after years of military service, something I had dreamed about on cold nights overseas, something that kept me going when days blurred together and time felt endless. The thought of my hometown wrapped in winter lights, the familiar smell of pine and cinnamon, my family gathered around the same old table, it all felt unreal, like a reward I'd finally earned. My deployment had stretched longer than expected, year after year passing with missed birthdays, missed holidays, missed funerals and weddings. This Christmas was supposed to be different. I had the ticket. I had the leave approved. I was counting down the days. The flight was booked for December 22nd. I remember staring at that date on my phone, rereading it like it might disappear if I looked away. I hadn't told many people yet. I wanted it to be a surprise, especially for my dad. He and I had always had a complicated relationship, but the distance had softened things. We talked more regularly while I was away. Short calls, a few texts here and there. He never said much, but he always asked if I was eating enough, if I was sleeping, if I was staying safe. For him, that was love. Growing up, my dad wasn't the emotional type. He worked long hours, fixed things around the house, and believed that providing was more important than talking. When I enlisted, he didn't try to stop me. He just nodded, shook my hand, and said, "Do your job, come back in one piece." That was the closest thing to a blessing he knew how to give. As Christmas got closer, the excitement started to feel heavy, like something fragile I was afraid to break. I started imagining pulling into the driveway, the porch light glowing, snow crunching under my boots. I pictured my mom crying when she saw me, my dad standing back at first, then pulling me into one of those stiff, quiet hugs he gave when words weren't enough. It played in my head like a movie I'd already watched 100 times. Then, just days before I was supposed to leave, my dad sent me a message. It was late at night where I was stationed. I had just finished a shift and was lying on my bunk, scrolling aimlessly, trying to quiet my mind. When I saw his name top up on my phone, my first thought was that he'd somehow found out about my plans. I smiled, already imagining his reaction. The message was short. "Don't come home for Christmas." I stared at the screen, rereading it over and over. At first, I thought there had to be a mistake. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe it was a typo. Maybe he was joking in his own awkward way. But there was no follow-up, no explanation, just those 5 words, sitting there like a wall. I called him immediately. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I sent a text back, asking what he meant, if everything was okay. Minutes passed. Then an hour. No response. That night, sleep didn't come. My mind raced through every possibility. Was someone sick? Had something happened to my mom? Had there been an argument I didn't know about? Or worse, had I done something wrong without realizing it? The next morning, I finally got a message from my mom. It didn't clear things up. If anything, it made them worse. "Your dad just needs some time. Please don't worry, we'll talk soon." That was it. I felt like the ground had shifted under me. For years, all I wanted was to go home. Now, suddenly, I was being told not to. I considered ignoring the message, getting on the plane anyway. After everything I'd sacrificed, after everything I'd missed, wasn't I allowed to come home? But something about my dad's message stopped me. There was a finality to it, a seriousness I couldn't shake. Over the next 2 days, I tried calling both my parents. Sometimes my mom answered, but she sounded tired, distracted. She avoided my questions, changed the subject, told me not to stress. My dad didn't answer at all. By December 21st, the day before my flight, I was a mess. My bag was packed, my leave clock was ticking, my command had already signed off. If I didn't go, it would mean sitting alone in the barracks over Christmas, listening to others talk about their families, their plans, their homes. That night, I finally got a call from my dad. His voice sounded older than I remembered, quieter. I meant what I said, he told me. You shouldn't come home. I asked him why. I told him I didn't understand. I told him I was already packed. There was a long pause on the line. I could hear him breathing, slow and heavy, like he was carrying something too big to say out loud. Finally, he spoke. Because I don't want you to see me like this. Those words hit harder than anything else he could have said. He explained that a few months earlier, he'd been diagnosed with a serious illness, one he hadn't told me about. Treatments had taken a toll on him. He'd lost weight, he was weaker, he didn't look like himself anymore. Christmas, he said, was already hard enough. He didn't want my homecoming overshadowed by what he was going through. I want you to remember me the way I was, he said. Not like this. I didn't know what to say. Anger flared up first. Anger that he hadn't told me, that he'd made this decision without me, that he thought he could protect me by pushing me away. Then guilt followed close behind. Guilt that I hadn't been there. Guilt that he'd been carrying this alone while I was halfway across the world. I told him none of that mattered. I told him I didn't care what he looked like. I told him I just wanted to be home, to sit with him, to be there. He didn't argue. He just repeated himself. Please. That single word broke me. In the end, I didn't get on the plane. Christmas came and went quietly. I watched snow fall outside the barracks window. I video called my mom. I talked to my dad for a few minutes. He tried to sound normal, asked about my work, told me he was proud of me. We both pretended everything was fine. After the holidays, I returned to duty, but nothing felt the same. The idea of home had changed. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was time I might be running out of. A few months later, I finally came home. Not for Christmas, not for a celebration, just because it was time. When I walked through the door, my dad was sitting in his chair by the window. He stood up when he saw me, slower than I remembered, leaning slightly on the armrest. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he smiled. "You made it," he said. I hugged him, carefully, feeling how much lighter he was, how fragile. And in that moment, I understood why he'd tried to keep me away. But I also knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Sometimes coming home isn't about the holiday or the surprise or the perfect moment you imagine when you're far away. Sometimes it's about showing up, even when things aren't perfect, especially then. That Christmas never happened the way I dreamed it would, but it taught me something I'll carry with me forever. Home isn't just where you're welcomed, it's where you're needed. You've been watching Betty's Magical Stories. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because the most magical stories are the ones that are real.